What do a car garage, a war bond tour, and a yacht have in common? They're all scenes of tragedy for Hollywood's brightest stars. From Thelma Todd's mysterious carbon monoxide poisoning to Natalie Wood's enigmatic drowning, the golden age of Hollywood was as deadly as it was glamorous. The mysterious death of Thelma Todd. On December 16, 1935, Thelma Todd, known for her comedic roles in Hollywood, was found dead in her car. The vehicle, a Lincoln Phaeton, was parked in the garage of her lover Roland West, a film director. Todd was just 29 years old at the time. Her body was discovered by her maid, Mae Whitehead, around 10:30 a.m. Authorities determined the cause of death as carbon monoxide poisoning. The autopsy revealed a lethal level of the gas in her bloodstream, and the official ruling was accidental death. But questions lingered. Todd had spent the previous evening at a party hosted by Hollywood writer Stanley Lupino. She left around 3:15 a.m., reportedly in high spirits. Her chauffeur, Ernest O. Peters, drove her home to her apartment above the Sidewalk Cafe, which Todd owned. Witnesses saw her enter the cafe, but what happened afterward remains unclear. Todd was embroiled in several personal and professional disputes, raising suspicions about her sudden death. She had recently ended a relationship with mobster Lucky Luciano, who allegedly pressured her to turn her cafe into a gambling den. Todd refused, creating tension. Luciano was questioned, but denied any involvement. Roland West, who shared a business relationship with Todd, was another figure in the spotlight. The two were romantically involved, despite West being married. They had frequent arguments, and West was known for his jealousy. On the night of Todd's death, it was said he locked her out of the house after an argument. This led to speculation that Todd, unable to get inside, sought refuge in her car and inadvertently left the engine running to stay warm. There were bruises on Todd's face, suggesting a possible altercation, but they were not deemed fatal. The coroner's report noted that she had consumed alcohol, but not enough to impair her judgment significantly. Her stomach contents included peas and carrots, which puzzled investigators, as her last known meal was at the party where no such food was served. Some speculated that Todd's death was a suicide, but this was dismissed by those who knew her well. Others believed she was murdered, either by a jealous lover or a vengeful mobster. Roland West's role remained a subject of debate. In 1952, he reportedly confessed to locking Todd out on the night of her death, claiming it was an accident. However, no legal action was taken, and West died in 1952, taking any secrets with him. Carole Lombard's tragic plane crash. A star known for her wit and beauty, Carole Lombard met a tragic end on January 16, 1942. At 33, she was at the peak of her career, having just finished a successful Bond tour to raise money for World War II. Lombard's tour raised over $2 million, a significant contribution to the war effort. Her husband, Clark Gable, had urged her to take the train home, but Lombard insisted on flying to return quickly to Los Angeles. That evening, Lombard boarded Transcontinental and Western Air Flight 3 from Las Vegas, along with her mother, Elizabeth Peters, and MGM publicist Otto Winkler. The plane, a Douglas DC-3, made a refueling stop in Las Vegas and departed at 7:07 p.m. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft veered off course, crashing into Potosi Mountain about 32 miles southwest of Las Vegas. All 22 people aboard, including Lombard, were killed instantly. The crash investigation revealed that the pilot had miscalculated the plane's altitude, failing to clear the mountain's peak. At the time, the Civil Aeronautics Board concluded that the pilot's error, combined with outdated navigational maps, led to the disaster. Lombard's body was identified by a diamond bracelet inscribed with her name, as her remains were severely burned. Clark Gable was devastated by the loss of his wife. He immediately traveled to the crash site where he joined the recovery efforts despite the dangerous conditions. Gable never fully recovered from Lombard's death, and it was said that he became more reckless and withdrawn afterward. In 1942, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces, perhaps as a way to cope with his grief. Jee Harlo's untimely death. Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, Jee Harlo was a rising star when she died unexpectedly on June 7, 1937. At just 26 years old, Harlo's death shocked the world and marked the loss of one of Hollywood's brightest talents. Known for her roles in films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8, Harlo was a symbol of glamour and sensuality. Her sudden illness, however, revealed a darker side to her seemingly charmed life. In late May 1937, Harlo began complaining of fatigue, nausea, and abdominal pain while filming Saratoga with Clark Gable. Initially, her symptoms were dismissed as a mild case of influenza, but her condition rapidly worsened. On June 3rd, she was diagnosed with uremic poisoning, a result of kidney failure. At the time, medical understanding of kidney disease was limited, and treatment options were few. Her mother, Jean Bello, a follower of Christian Science, reportedly delayed seeking medical attention, believing in spiritual healing over conventional medicine. Harlo was admitted to Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, where doctors attempted to save her, but it was too late. She slipped into a coma on June 6th and died the following day at 11:37 a.m. Her death certificate listed the cause as cerebral edema, a complication of kidney failure. The autopsy confirmed that Harlo had been suffering from scarlet fever as a child, which likely contributed to her weakened kidneys. Hollywood was devastated by Harlo's death. She had been under contract with MGM, and her loss left the studio scrambling to finish Saratoga. Ultimately, the film was completed using body doubles and close-up shots of Harlo's co-stars. The film was released in July 1937 and became a box office hit, but audiences were acutely aware that they were watching Harlo's final performance. Her funeral, held at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, was attended by hundreds of mourners, including many of Hollywood's biggest stars. Clark Gable, who was deeply affected by her death, served as a pallbearer. Harlo was laid to rest in a white marble crypt inscribed with the words, "Our Baby." The untimely demise of Veronica Lake, known for her signature peekaboo hairstyle and roles in films like Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire, Veronica Lake fell from Hollywood's golden pedestal and met a tragic end on July 7, 1973. Lake was once a top box office draw during the early 1940s, but by the time of her death at 50, she was largely forgotten by the industry that had once celebrated her. Lake's fall from grace began in the late 1940s when her career started to decline. Her trademark hairstyle, which had made her famous, was now considered outdated. Roles became scarce, and her struggles with alcoholism and mental health issues exacerbated her difficulties. Lake's volatile behavior on set, combined with personal problems, led to her being labeled as difficult to work with. By the early 1950s, she was reduced to taking roles in low-budget films and making sporadic television appearances. Financial troubles further compounded Lake's woes. After divorcing her third husband, she was left virtually penniless and drifted from place to place, often working menial jobs to make ends meet. In 1962, she was arrested for public drunkenness, a stark contrast to the glamorous image she had once portrayed on screen. In her final years, Lake lived in near obscurity, residing in a small apartment in Vermont. Her health deteriorated due to years of heavy drinking, and in 1973 she was diagnosed with hepatitis. By the time she was admitted to the University of Vermont Medical Center, it was too late. Lake died of acute hepatitis and kidney failure. Her death certificate also noted cirrhosis of the liver, a result of her long battle with alcoholism. Lake's death went largely unnoticed by the press, a reflection of how far she had fallen from her Hollywood heyday. Her ashes were scattered at sea as she had requested, but there was no public funeral, and only a handful of people attended a private memorial service held in her honor. Marilyn Monroe's enigmatic end. The most iconic star of the Golden Age, Marilyn Monroe died under mysterious circumstances on August 5, 1962. She was found lifeless in her Brentwood home at the age of 36. Monroe's death was officially ruled a probable suicide due to an overdose of barbiturates. Yet the circumstances surrounding her passing have fueled endless speculation. Monroe's career was at a crossroads in 1962. She had just been fired from the film Something's Got to Give due to repeated absences, and her personal life was in turmoil. Her relationships with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy were the subject of intense scrutiny. On the evening of August 4th, Monroe spoke with both Peter Lawford, Kennedy's brother-in-law, and Joe DiMaggio Jr., her ex-husband's son. Lawford later claimed that Monroe sounded distressed and incoherent during their conversation, leading him to believe something was wrong. Monroe was last seen alive around 8 p.m. by her housekeeper, Eunice Murray. Later that night, Murray noticed a light under Monroe's bedroom door, but received no response when she knocked. Concerned, she called Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived at the house shortly after midnight. Greenson broke into the bedroom through a window and discovered Monroe lying face down in bed, clutching a telephone. An empty bottle of Nembutal was found nearby. The autopsy revealed a lethal dose of barbiturates in Monroe's system, enough to cause immediate death. However, the absence of water or glass in the room raised questions about how she ingested such a large quantity of pills. Furthermore, there were no signs of foul play, but the scene was immediately compromised by the presence of multiple people before the police arrived. Speculation about Monroe's death has persisted for decades. Conspiracy theories range from accidental overdose to murder, with some alleging that Monroe was silenced to protect the Kennedys. Others believe she was the victim of a cover-up involving Hollywood elites and government officials, the death of Judy Garland. Beloved by millions as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland died on June 22, 1969, at the age of 47. Her death, caused by an accidental overdose of barbiturates, was the tragic culmination of a lifetime of struggle and exploitation. Garland's troubles began early in her career. At just 13, she signed with MGM, where she was subjected to a grueling schedule, weight control measures, and the steady use of stimulants and sedatives to keep up with the demands of stardom. The pressures of Hollywood took a toll on her physical and mental health. By the 1950s, her career was in decline, and she battled financial difficulties, substance abuse, and failed marriages. In 1969, Garland married her fifth husband, Mickey Deans, a nightclub manager, and moved to London. By then, she was in poor health and deeply in debt. On the morning of June 22nd, Deans found her unresponsive in the bathroom of their rented home in Chelsea. The cause of death was determined to be an overdose of Seconal, a powerful barbiturate. The coroner's report stated that her death was accidental, a result of self-administered barbiturates over a long period. Garland's body was returned to New York, where a funeral service was held at Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel. Thousands of fans lined the streets to pay their respects as her casket was carried out. She was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. Garland's death shocked the world, but it was not entirely unexpected. Her struggles with addiction and depression were well known, and those close to her feared she would not survive much longer. Grace Kelly's fatal car accident. She's the Hollywood star who became Princess of Monaco and died on September 14, 1982, after a car accident on the winding roads of Monaco. She was 52 years old. Known for her roles in Alfred Hitchcock films like Rear Window and To Catch a Thief, Kelly left Hollywood in 1956 to marry Prince Rainier III of Monaco, becoming Her Serene Highness Princess Grace. On the morning of September 13, 1982, Kelly was driving with her daughter, Princess Stephanie, from their country home in Rock Agel to Monaco. Kelly was behind the wheel of a Rover P6, a car she rarely drove. As they navigated the narrow, steep roads, Kelly suddenly lost control of the vehicle. The car veered off the road and plunged down a 120-foot slope, crashing into a garden below. Kelly was found unconscious with severe injuries, including brain trauma and multiple fractures. Stephanie, who sustained minor injuries, managed to escape the wreckage. Both were rushed to the Monaco hospital, where doctors fought to save Kelly's life. Despite their efforts, she never regained consciousness. After being in a coma for nearly 24 hours, she died on the morning of September 14th. The official cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage, which doctors believed had caused her to lose control of the car. The accident shocked the world. Kelly was not only a beloved Hollywood icon, but also a respected royal figure. Her death left a deep void in Monaco, where she had been a devoted wife, mother, and princess. Thousands of mourners attended her funeral at the St. Nicholas Cathedral in Monaco on September 18, 1982. Prince Rainier, who was visibly devastated, never remarried and was buried alongside her when he passed away in 2005. The circumstances of the crash sparked much speculation. Some reports suggested that Princess Stephanie was actually driving, though this was denied by the palace. Others questioned whether Kelly's health had been declining before the accident, possibly contributing to the cerebral hemorrhage. However, no conclusive evidence emerged to support these theories, and the official account remains that Kelly suffered a medical emergency while driving, leading to the fatal crash, the weird passing of Natalie Wood. Her life came to a mysterious and tragic end on the night of November 29, 1981. The 43-year-old actress, famous for her roles in West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, drowned off the coast of Catalina Island, California. Wood had been on a weekend trip aboard the yacht Splendor with her husband, Robert Wagner, and co-star Christopher Walken. The circumstances of her death have remained one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. On the evening of November 28th, the group had dinner at a local restaurant before returning to the yacht. Witnesses later reported hearing loud arguments coming from the boat. Around midnight, it was discovered that Wood was missing, along with the yacht's dinghy, Valiant. A search was immediately launched, and Wood's body was found floating in the water about a mile from the yacht on the morning of November 29th. She was wearing a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. The autopsy report revealed that Wood had consumed alcohol and had several fresh bruises on her arms and legs, as well as an abrasion on her cheek. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled her death as an accidental drowning, suggesting that she had fallen into the water while trying to secure the dinghy. However, questions quickly arose. Why would she have left the yacht at that hour? And why was she dressed so lightly for the cold night? Robert Wagner told investigators that he and Wood had argued that night, but he insisted he had no idea how she ended up in the water. Christopher Walken remained mostly silent, stating that he was asleep when the incident occurred. The yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, later claimed that Wagner had delayed the search for Wood, adding to the suspicions. In 2011, the case was reopened after Davern publicly stated that he believed Wood's death was not accidental. The cause of death was later amended to drowning and other undetermined factors. In 2018, Wagner was named a person of interest, though no charges were filed. Despite the renewed investigation, the exact circumstances of Wood's death remain unresolved. The sudden death of Jane Mansfield. She is one of the most flamboyant and sensational figures of the 1950s, died in a horrific car accident on June 29, 1967. At just 34 years old, Jane Mansfield's life was cut short at the height of her career, leaving behind a legacy of controversy and tragedy. Mansfield was traveling from Biloxi, Mississippi to New Orleans, Louisiana after a nightclub performance. She was accompanied by her lawyer, Sam Brody, her driver, Ronnie Harrison, and 3 of her children, including her daughter, Mariska Hargitay. The group was in a 1966 Buick Electra, heading down U.S. Highway 90. At around 2:25 a.m., the car crashed into the rear of a tractor trailer that had slowed behind a truck spraying for mosquitoes. The impact sheared off the top of the car, instantly killing Mansfield, Brody, and Harrison. Miraculously, all 3 children in the back seat survived with minor injuries. The official cause of death was listed as crushed skull with avulsion of cranium and brain. Mansfield's death was widely publicized, partly due to her reputation as a sex symbol and her penchant for publicity. She had been a fixture in the tabloids, known for her revealing outfits, high-profile romances, and constant media presence. Her death was a shocking and gruesome end to a life that had been equally dramatic. She was buried in Fairview Cemetery in Penn Argyl, Pennsylvania, with a heart-shaped tombstone that reads, "We live to love you more each day." The tragic death of Sharon Tate. An actress on the brink of stardom, Sharon Tate met a horrifying end on August 9, 1969. At just 26 years old and 8.5 months pregnant, Tate's death was one of the most brutal and infamous murders in Hollywood history. Tate was married to director Roman Polanski and was living in a rented home at 10050 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles. On the night of August 8, 1969, Tate had dinner with friends and then returned home. Later that night, members of the Manson family, under the orders of Charles Manson, broke into the house. Tate was at home with 3 friends: Jay Sebring, a celebrity hairstylist, Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folger coffee fortune, and Wojciech Frykowski, Folger's boyfriend. The group had no idea of the horror that awaited them. Around midnight, the Manson family members, including Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, and Patricia Krenwinkel, invaded the house. The intruders began a murderous rampage that ended in the brutal deaths of all 4 victims, as well as Stephen Parent, an 18-year-old visitor who had the misfortune of being there. Tate was the last to die, pleading for the life of her unborn child. Her pleas were met with cruelty, and she was stabbed 16 times by Susan Atkins. The following morning, the housekeeper discovered the scene with "Pig" written in Tate's blood on the front door. The murders shocked the world and marked the end of the free-spirited 1960s. The trial of the Manson family members became a media spectacle, exposing the dark underbelly of the counterculture movement. Charles Manson and several of his followers were convicted of the murders and sentenced to life in prison. Sharon Tate's death remains one of the most tragic moments in Hollywood history. She was a rising star, best known for her role in Valley of the Dolls, and was described by friends and colleagues as gentle, kind, and full of potential. Her murder and the murder of her unborn son, Paul Richard Polanski, cast a long shadow over Hollywood. Tate was laid to rest at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California, alongside her son, with whom she was buried.